In today's episode of HR Visionaries, we talk to Kate from K&B. We talk about how AI will shape the future of HR, in particular in light of what it means for leadership. Stay tuned. Welcome to HR Visionaries, the show where we discover the truth behind contemporary HR. I'm your host, Benjamin. Join me as I unfold today's talent ecosystem with HR innovators from around the globe. Welcome to the latest episode of HR Visionaries. I'm very much looking forward to my guest today. Kate, it's great to have you on.
So great to be here, Ben.
Kate, can you tell us a bit about yourself? Who are you?
I'm Kate Johnson. I am the CHRO of a boutique professional services firm called K&B Global Services. We're in the US. We are small but mighty. If you haven't heard of our brand, that's okay, but our clients are large global matrix organizations with complex processes. And our role is to help them become more efficient, unpack that. We work in areas like IT and business processes. But like I said, I'm in the US, I'm from the South, I'm a Tar Heel. I've been in HR about 10 years and very excited about the future.
What do you like about HR?
People. We could call it capital P, people function, but it's human relationships. And in my career, I've just had tremendous satisfaction with the basics of, in the knowledge economy, people need jobs. Helping someone have a job, get a job, grow in their job, have a career. This is really meaningful to me. So being a part of that has been really great and something that brings me satisfaction every day.
Well, the human relationship part is probably something that will become a much more important topic over the next few years, sorry.
Yes. Well, in the connection with us with technology has been in the conversation for a while. What do you have a machine do and what do you have a human do? And humans, I would argue, have fought for their value. Psychologically, we want to be with other humans. And really with learning as the first example. So I think as computers in the 80s and 90s got introduced into classrooms, there was this big concern, will children still learn? And I worked at a university at a time when we got, they're called massive open online courses. So Harvard and Yale and Duke started releasing all of their content. This is now a long time ago, so maybe 15 years ago. And there was this big uproar. Oh my gosh, will people still want to go to top universities if they can get it for free? And I'll never forget the president of Duke at the time saying this publicly: look, humans want to learn from other humans. And so we will find a way with this technology to either integrate it or coexist with it or, get the best from it, but we're not scared. And I think that's really played out and informs my thoughts on technology and the workforce. Or technology or AI right now. And you asked about human relationships. I think we're just psychologically wired to be together, and whether it's work, whether it's family, whether it's, other activities we're doing. And so that's my assumption and gives me peace. And I can sleep at night that human relationships, as difficult as they are, they're very rewarding and we won't get away from them. We constantly crave them and need them.
I think it was Sam Altman who said a few weeks ago that many things we do now, a person from a few hundred years ago would not have considered work.
Oh gosh, yes. And that's just sort of wild right now to conceptualize work in a digital way. And I even saw the kind of oncoming technology sort of from the movie Minority Report, that there's been advancements in being able to work, putting your hands in front of you in space. Oh, forgive me. Minority Report's an old film, isn't it? Is that like 20 years with Tom Cruise? And he puts on these gloves and he's playing in space. And my understanding is that has come to fruition, which I find very exciting. And it's something you wouldn't think of, but here we are. So I think those advancements are really exciting.
Well, absolutely. The
Well, what I find so interesting is that, as you said, so like over the course of the years, people have always have been worried about advancements and technological development. However, there was always an improvement with regards to people's life, with regards to people's health, thanks to technology. So therefore, the positivity around advancement in technology is, I think, super important indeed.
I agree. Well, and humans are insatiably curious. We can't stop ourselves as much as we can't stop from relating to each other. I think we're just so hungry. And it's many times as parts of humanity have tried to hold back on technological development or said, hey, this is destructive, or hey, this has consequences. There's been just as counter argument or counter voice that this is just too exciting. And so if you embrace that and just accept that, that's how we approach this. We have sort of this yin and yang of humanity with our relationship with technology. Because by the way, I am not a technologist. I was a liberal arts major. So I feel that I represent that voice, that just the pure curiosity, but I don't have a aptitude per se for technology. So I think, it's sort of fascinating and interesting and exciting. But what is different now is we're almost at a critical mass of convenience and how much we get from technology. It's reducing the improvements in our lives, you could argue, or sort of like, we have so much great stuff. How can you make my life better with more technology right now?
Well, it's the how to make life better, I think, is a discussion we don't have enough these days. I think very often it's about like, oh my God, isn't that threatening, or things that change? Well, will it worsen things? But overall, well, if we are positive about things, and you mentioned, okay, you work with so many companies around the world working on their processes. So making stuff better is the job of so many people, and therefore, why don't be positive about it?
Oh, I would agree. And it speaks to the complexity of our world, that it is harder for us as individuals to understand the impact of what we're doing, the impact of a basic task, as much as the large work stream, the large product, the bigger company and organization. So I think a lot of people feel removed. They can't see the end result of what they're doing. Again, I speak to knowledge work. I think it's different if you're working with your hands or being mechanical. There's a different feeling there. But in knowledge work, it's ethereal, it's ambiguous. I mean, there's so many people who are like, I pushed paper today in the digital way. That's an old way to frame it. But people lose 30% of their week to emails and 50% of their week to virtual meetings and go, what did I do? And there was all this technology in the mix. And so it's getting harder to see, I think, in our weeks, what that relationship is. But back to the human part of it, and to me, I continue to argue for fulfillment. There is an ability to feel fulfilled in a relationship with technology. If it empowers you to be you, to do your thing, to have your superpower, then I think it gets exciting. And I do think people feel it there for sure. And my friends who are actually technologists get a lot of thrill from technology. I'm not even speaking to their truth. They wouldn't say it that way. They're going to nerd out. They're going to be in the middle of whatever their tech is, or video games, or etc. And they're like fish in water.
How do you think HR can acquire these superpowers? And you mentioned your friends in technology who are very open to change and to appreciate things that are going on. How do we get that into the HR departments?
Well, it starts with a reorientation. And I mean by that, of what is HR, what's its purpose and service. And this conversation has gone on a long time in the best way. I mean, the transition from human resources to the people function. If you look at there's more job titles now that are, in people analytics, and there is a reframing and a reorienting of what we do. And When I started my career 10 years ago, even before that, I was never interested in HR. It sounded dull. It sounded boring.
Yep.
We all know compliance is at the root of it. It's very process driven in its function to the organization. But a lot of leaders for several decades have said there's more value to HR than that. So I think at first HR had to pivot and say, what is our role in the business? And that's the high level. And so we've evolved to the people function. We've evolved to be strategic, which I would argue is very exciting about HR right now. And that's at the senior level, the executive level. They're saying, what is the role of HR here? Is it a support function? That's the basic answer. The better answer is we're solving problems for the capital O organization. Oh, by the way, we are the capital O organization. And now I'm in professional services, which I relish that our people are that. When you're in a traditional product company, it's a little bit of different framing. But so what HR can do, working down from that, is to understand their role in the business. And for a long time, to be a support function, if you work in HR, your role is to support. I get that. That's not the future. The future needs us to be more of a service organization. We absolutely need to be tied to business strategy. And at a basic level, when I think of service, we're solving people problems. Because modern business, you have to be a problem solver. And our toolkit, our superpowered HR is people. And there's nothing messier in a company than people. And I think it's been devalued by a lot of business leaders because they didn't want to deal with people, or people are just messy and they want it to go away. And I think HR heroes, or capital P people heroes, are willing to be in that mess and willing to fight for humans and kind of brawl for the human experience in the midst of kind of technology or processes or all these other structures we try to use to clean up the human mess.
The cleaning up the human mess, it's actually quite a funny way to put it. So to the role you play in business as HR, as an HR leader, how would you describe that role?
I would describe it as a leader first. When the whole company is looking to you for direction, no matter what your discipline is, you are a leader. You're shaping people's lives just in how you conduct yourself. So I root in that. But then I'm responsible to the business, which is a big deal, to mitigate risk for the business, to be proactive for the business, and think ahead. So the hardest part of HR is seeing the future. I think if you're in the C-suite, by the time you get to the top, your job is to see the future of the business. And, and other parts of a discipline or function are executing on the day-to-day. But I see my role is to see the future of HR, or to see the future of my firm and create solutions or solve problems on that journey.
This strategic view of things, how did you develop that?
I began my career at McKinsey & Company, which is very unusual. Now, I was not a consultant. I started out as a recruiter, and I just lived, ate, and breathed being in that organization, what strategy is. Not everyone starts there, but that was unbelievably great training to be successful in business, to understand the difference in strategy, or, if you get nerdy about it, the difference between strategy and planning. Most people think strategy is just having a plan or having a budget for something, but to be strategic is to say, how do you have a competitive advantage? How do you conduct a business in a way that you beat out everyone else? And I found that riveting. I think that just resonated with me. I was never going to be a consultant or fit in that way, but that was really exciting. And so I took that with me. And then I have worked at a series of small scaling companies where it was much more important. If I'd worked at a lot of classic steady state businesses, I may not have needed strategy that much, but I think it helped me tremendously to understand the strategy of why you do anything as much as the broader organizational strategy.
How do you teach other HR leaders to have a more business-oriented view of things?
First, you have to decide or evaluate together, are they curious about the business? And I use this example. I started my career in recruiting, and to be a recruiter, you're essentially a process facilitator. A good recruiter, you're a partner to the business, and then a great recruiter produces raving fans. And so to me, you have to be very curious about people's careers. You have to be curious about every single candidate. You have to be curious about every single hiring manager. You just have to be really interested. So you have to assess as an HR leader, are you curious about the business? Are you curious about your industry? Are you curious? And what's great is you don't have to master all of it. You don't have to have an MBA. An MBA is very helpful, but just to know, and I think that's the biggest ask of business leaders in general, is that HR knows and understands their business. And so I think if you can get to that, if you're in HR and you're really passionate about what your company's doing, or even a different company or different industry, you have the aptitude, and I think you can build from there.
When you think ahead, so HR being more business oriented, HR focusing on how to leverage technology. How do you picture HR in 5 years' time?
5 years is tough.
Indeed.
The acceleration of artificial intelligence, and I'll use that in a specific term. So it could mean an AI could mean anything at this point, but in the ways you would use it in business, we're at such a churning point that I'm nervous to predict 5 years from now, because it relies on human choice. It relies on how we shape AI or AI shapes us, and how we choose to interact together. So my early prediction is that HR will have a greater role in human interaction and in human problem solving, or mitigating what's happened from technology, and be deployed in a different way.
What will people do with the free time they gain from applying more technology?
I believe they will create more. I believe the history of humanity, every time we've had a technological advancement, the curmudgeons and the capitalists think people will just do nothing with themselves and sit on their hands. Or the Silicon Valley will argue for utopia. But I think people assume the worst, and people will become lazy and they won't do anything. And actually, I think companies that are starting to use AI as an excuse to either, conduct layoffs or reduce operations or cut back might really be short-sighted, instead of looking at technology as something that could lead to creating more. So that's the assumption belief I have, that people will go find something else. They will find another avenue to create, do work, because that's the precedent we have. People have not sat down because we had more technology. In fact, they have accelerated. So that's my current belief.
Looking ahead, what are the initiatives you are focusing on at the moment to prepare for the next few years already?
I'm on the basic journey to understand what AI is, and it was hard at first, because maybe a year or two ago, when large language models, we had the advancements before ChatGPT was really a thing, and all the hype, it was very overwhelming. It was very intimidating. And to learn about the capabilities of AI, you could just see the worst, that there'd be no use for us anymore at all, because AI could do everything. So since then, I've been unpacking, well, what actually is AI? Do we understand it? It's not a technology. And my sense is that It's somewhere between tech and human. It can make decisions for itself, which is riveting. And so never before have we had an entity and a life form. It's not a life form, something alien, not of outer space, but just inorganic. But gosh, I'm still working out how to describe AI. That I do know that it is a place in which we can offload our thinking. Mm-hmm. And so for me to prepare, I'm trying to understand, how do we offload our thinking to AI, which is very vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And so tactically, I'm playing with it every day. So I use my own models every day to understand it for me personally. Then I'm looking at my colleagues, my community, the other HR nerds, and saying, how are you using it? How are your people using it? I'm talking to experts and asking them questions, because I think this is the most transformative topic for HR, period. And I think that's known. People see that, but they're all having different reactions to it. And my reaction is not that this is just another piece of software, or this will come through, the CIO of a company or the chief technology officer of a company. I think it will impact the CHRO more. And there's reasons for that. So I'm preparing at all the levels. I'm thinking about my organization. I'm thinking about our clients. I'm trying to just understand it. And I think a lot of the use cases that really big companies are talking about are kind of silly. They're kind of stiff. They don't keep up with where the technology's going. And they want, large companies want to control in the same way they do all software. It's structured, it's rigorous, and you roll it out and you train people on it. But AI is so unpredictable at what it's good at and not good at. And so there is actually no user's manual. Most models that are released to us, or we buy, whatever the arrangement is, there's no manual. And so you have to play with it, which makes it very, perfect for me at a small firm. We can play with it. It's harder at a big firm where you might have limitations and restrictions. But I think it's evolving like something we've never seen before. So by the time you create some overarching big solution, it's outdated. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to stay nimble and develop a strategy in the trenches for AI in HR.
Very interesting what you said about, the CIO, the CTO, who naturally feel in charge when it comes to technology. However, as you said, so AI being actually much less a software and much more a being, being part of the workforce rather than part of the software spending.
Yes. And, the other thing I'm noodling on right now is management, because if the next stage of AI is sort of agents, I think the hype right now is agentic AI. You have to be able to understand systems, and you have to understand management. And human management has been such a tough topic for a long time. It's been in decline in the US, or it's under attack. It's usually the first thing that's seen as bloat. But have you ever met anyone who said, "Oh, my managers have been great"? Like it's just one of the hardest roles to do. And to me, HR is really important to rebuilding that or helping that. But when we introduce AI, either agentic AI, either everyone using their own AI, it really changes management. And it either what our managers are doing or what they need to do. And I think that's a big role for HR in the next few years is, how do we help management or reorient management?
Kate, I have one last question for you indeed. Since you have, interviewed so many people over the course of your career, I was wondering, what are those questions you like most to find out about a person's personality, find out about, whether a person fits to your organization?
So my top questions I might ask, this is very simple. I ask, what attracts you to our company? Which I think that's a very common question. But oftentimes in body language, in tonality, in answer, you connect to that person. You understand their motivation. So you have to be trained to assess that. And people can give scripted answers to that. But I think sometimes the basic questions can be very strong if you have a good rubric. So it's not about having elaborate questions to ask someone. Now, structured questions, that's a different topic. I think assessing people for jobs in a structured, technical way, that's really good. But I would always include, what attracts you to us and what we're doing, what attracts you to this role, and then I really listen to that answer.
Cool. Kate, thank you so much for your time. It has been incredibly interesting. I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Ben.
And to all of you guys, thanks for listening in, and see you next time.